All right, Film 1 students, welcome to a tutorial. Today I'm going to introduce to you the basic workflow in Adobe Premiere and get you going with everything you need to know to be able to import photos and video and to be able to use keyframes to move them around and affect the way they look. Okay, so we're going to start by launching Adobe Premiere. And again, the first time you do this, it may or may not take a few minutes, so don't panic. As long as you see it start to load, should be good to go. You're going to come to your little home card here. If this is your first time starting on the project, click New Project and name it. I already have a project going for this, so I'm going to go ahead and launch this. And again, depending on how fast your computer is, will affect how long this process takes. Now, in Adobe Premiere, there are these tabs across the top that change the layout. Okay, so you've got the Assembly tab, the Editing tab, Color tab, the Effects tab, Audio tab, your Graphics tab. For this project, we're going to be working primarily in Assembly, Editing, and Graphics. And probably most of the work you're going to do is either assembly or editing. So let's get started there. Okay. Now again, Adobe Premiere is divided into 4 quadrants. Okay, you've got your bin over here in the bottom left. That's where all of your source files are going to be stored. Top left becomes your preview window. Down here is your timeline where your sequence sits, where you actually put everything together. And then this top quadrant is your output window that shows you basically what it looks like. Okay, so first thing we need to do is import our media. If you double click over here, then you should be able to go right to the desktop to the folder that you saved everything into. Okay, and highlight those files and click import. And I'm also going to go back and just pull in real quick a couple movie clips for fun as well. Here, we'll do this one and we will do this one. Click import. Those will also come in. Okay, so now we've got some photos. We've got our music track. Okay. And we've got our 2 video clips. Now, what we don't have is a sequence. Okay, our timelines are called sequences in Adobe Premiere, and it's really cool. You can actually build multiple versions of the same project by having more than one sequence over here. We'll get way more into that later. What's very important when you're starting out is to create the type of sequence that you want. Don't get lazy and just drop a photo over here, because that will create a sequence for you. But if you go up to the sequence and look at the settings, you'll see that this is not a 1080 by 1920 aspect ratio. Okay, it makes a sequence that is the size of the first thing that you drop into that window, which we don't want because not all of your media is going to be the same size. So this is going to create problems for you. Like if we delete this and then we drop one of our video clips in, let's just set an in and an out, and I drop some video down in here, and we just say keep this. Look what we've got now. Okay, so it's not going to fit properly, and you're going to have to zoom things in. They're going to be pixelated. It's going to be wonky. Okay, so rather than just dropping some media in to create your sequence, you go to File, New, Sequence, and just choose one of these presets. I like digital SLR 1080p 24 frames per second. Okay, that's going to create a nice standard 1080 window here for us to work in. And for a mixed media project like this, this is definitely the best way to go. Okay, so now that we've got our timeline, we're ready to start adding things. Now for this project, I want you to put your song or your music track in there first. All right, so grab this, drop it in there. Now you'll notice that's kind of hard to see. All right, so the next thing you need to do, click on this little wrench here in your sequence settings and do expand all tracks. What that does is makes the tracks a little bit taller so that you can see with a little bit more detail what the waveform is looking like, so that you know how to line up the transitions between your clips with the beats in the song more accurately. Okay, to get in even further and see this in better detail with the sequence area selected. See, if you're up here, see how my bounding box is above the preview window. If I hit plus and minus here, it's going to zoom in and out up there. It's not going to actually change my timeline. So I want to zoom in on my sequence. I have to make sure that I've clicked once here so that I have my bounding box. And now if I hit plus and minus on the keyboard, you can see that it zooms in and I can see in greater detail what's going on with my music track. Okay, so plus and minus on the keyboard are very important shortcuts. You can do it by clicking and dragging here to zoom in and out, but we want to try to do everything we can to reduce our mouse clicks because it's faster to just use the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so it's not command plus and minus, it's just plus and minus. In Photoshop, it's command plus and minus, but in Premiere, it's just plus and minus to go in and out. Okay, so once you've got your music laid in there, let's start putting in some photos. All right, so if you double click on a photo, it's going to launch. You're going to see it in the preview window. All your photos are going to be 5 seconds by default. So when you grab this guy and bring it down, it's going to be 5 seconds long. And you can just grab a bunch of these and lay them in. I'm just going to lay them in very quickly to demonstrate how to kind of line them up and make them move. So when we preview this by hitting spacebar, okay, hit spacebar again and it stops. So I'm going to actually move this guy to the end and right click. If you end up with space in here, you can right click the space, hit ripple delete, and it will snap everything over to the side. So let's zoom in even closer so we can see what we're doing better here. And let's start adjusting these. Okay, so the way that you do that is when you click here and you've got your white bounding box, meaning the clip is selected, up in the preview window, you can click on effect controls. And this gives you your controls over the motion, the opacity, and the time remapping, and any other effects that you drop onto it. You can adjust the parameters in this window in the top left. So you can see we've got position, and now this position, if we click on it, you can see 96540 is the coordinates of the exact center of our screen, and that's where the anchor is for this photo. Okay, the scale can change this. If you mouse over it, you get this little Adobe finger. If you click and hold, move your mouse to the left, it gets smaller. Move your mouse to the right, it gets bigger. It's a very quick way to adjust things if you're not worrying about being super precise, or you want to go by just how it looks and feels. If you want a precise number, you can click on it, type in and hit enter, and it will go exactly to that value. Okay, so at 50%, this photo is a nice fit for our frame. Okay, if we want to move it around, we click on position. You can either change this first one to move it left and right, change the Y coordinates to move it up and down. If you want to quickly recenter it, you're like, oh man, how do I get it back to the middle? Then just click this little guy here and we'll reset that to its default value. Now, in order to make this thing push in or pull back or move to the side, we have to use what are called keyframes. And keyframes are just little reference points that dictate what value this will be at what place in the clip, on which frame. Okay, so let's say we want this to start when the clip comes in. We want it to look just like this, so we set it to 50, and then you click the little stopwatch over here to the left of whatever you want to set keyframes for. So scale, boom. Now you'll see you get this little square here, and that is a keyframe for 50. Now that's the only value, so it's not moving. But if we come down here in time just a little bit, let's say we want it to zoom in 10. Let's change this to 60. Now as soon as we enter a different value from the first keyframe, it's going to automatically add our second keyframe. So as soon as I hit enter, now we have a 60 keyframe. And if you look, when we go to this one, it's 50. When we go to this one, it's 60. And Premiere automatically makes that change from 50 to 60 between those keyframes. So now we're just using simple math, distance, rate, and time. Okay, basically we're giving these photos a velocity, right? If you try to figure out the speed at which they zoom, you just have to tell it to zoom a certain distance over a certain amount of time. And these keyframes can move anywhere. So they just mean this certain value, and wherever you leave them is where Premiere will set that value. So if we want this picture, look, if we put them right next to each other and we hit play, it doesn't move, doesn't move, doesn't move. Now it's going to start zooming. Now it's going to stop. Okay, so before this, it's 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, bam, it's going to start changing to 60. And then after that point, it's going to stay 60. So if you wanted to just smoothly zoom in or out or move whatever the whole time, then you just grab these keyframes and you just drag them out to the edges. And if you can't see this, when you pull up, when you hit effect controls, if it looks like this and there's no preview of the clip over here, you just need to hit this little arrow and it will show. Always have this up. This is great because see, as I move this here, you can look, the playhead down here is also moving as well. And what this does is allows you to just very accurately go from the beginning of this clip to the end of that clip. Okay? So if these keyframes are at the beginning and end, then when we hit play, you can see that we just get this nice smooth zoom the whole time. Okay? So now let's go ahead and do that on this one. Let's have her zoom the same way. First we need to get her edge to edge. Okay, that's good. We keyframe it and we just move off that keyframe a little bit, and let's set our next value to 129 because we want it to zoom 10 as well. Okay, so changing the same amount over the same amount of time is going to make these clips play well together because they're going to zoom at the same rate. Okay. All right. So, and if you want them to go the other direction, super easy. Let's say instead you want it to pull back. Well, all you do is switch the keyframes. Take this 50 keyframe and put it at the end. Take this 60 keyframe and put it at the beginning. And now it's going to change from 60 down to 50. Okay, you can do that with the positioning too. Maybe you want it to push in on her face a little bit. Okay, check this out. So if we hit it now, if you have keyframes and you want to add keyframes, it's good to use these little buttons here. If I push this button, it's going to go right to the first keyframe. That way, the new keyframes I add will be perfectly lined up with the other keyframes. All right. So watch this. Now I'm going to keyframe my position. So it's going to start here. But what I want it to end up, oops, I went too far. Hold on. I want it to end up like over, I want to zoom in on her face a little bit more. Don't want to go too far because I don't want to expose that edge. Now if I put this keyframe over here, now watch, when it plays, it's going to kind of move over to the right a little bit too, and bring her a little bit more into the center of the frame. So you can do all kinds of compound moves. So anything can be adjusted with keyframes. Okay, if you go into your effects, right, and we do, I don't know, video effects, blur, okay, let's say we want to put a Gaussian blur on this, which is just like a random, see down here, Gaussian blur, the blurriness is your luck. When we crank this blurriness up, right, that's like your standard kind of out of focus look to it, okay? Well, if it starts at 0 here, and then maybe like toward the end of this, we just want it to blur out a little bit, okay? Oops, I went too far. Sorry. So let's stay like right about here. Let's keyframe it at 0. So it'll be 0 all the way to this point. And then maybe let's just get it. That's like more blurry than we normally do, but for demonstration purposes, this will work. Okay, so now what's going to happen is as we start playing, when it hits that first keyframe, it's going to start getting blurry. Okay, you can do it with the opacity if you want to make it, become transparent. If you want to make it, let's say, check this out. If we go into color correction, right, and we put a lumetri color on it, this just gives us, all kinds of control over the color of it, the contrast, the exposure, highlights, shadows, you name it. It's kind of like a Photoshop filter, right? But let's go to the saturation. I love desaturating clips. So if the saturation's at 100%, let's keyframe that. Let's make this go to black and white. Just move it a little bit, change the saturation to 0. Put these guys at the very beginning and end. And now as this clip plays, it's also going to desaturate and go to black and white. Okay, so you can control absolutely everything with keyframes. Okay, so you're going to want to go through and you want to, a quick way to resize your photos is to right click and hit set to frame size, and it will scale it back to where it touch, the two of the edges touch, and then you can kind of adjust it from there. Okay, and again, zoom them in, zoom them out, but try to get them to flow together. You want them to move at roughly the same rate. All right, now what I should have been doing though before I started making all these guys move is timing my edits, but I did it this way because I want to show you why you don't want to mess with this. Okay, so watch. Okay, so I want this to just play for a little bit here, watch. Now I want to cut to the next picture. But if I do this and I shorten this, okay, now look, you can only see one of my keyframes. My second keyframe is clear off out here in space. Okay, so if you need to adjust it, it's gonna be kind of hard to find. But it's okay, because it'll have the same velocity because it's got less time, so it's changing less. So it still moves at the same speed as this one, right? Watch. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna change this one to be about there and bring this one over. Change this one to be here. We want this guy here. And this is all just feel, okay? Go by how the music feels and, trust your instincts on when it tells you that it should change, okay? Okay, so now with this stuff we can, again, right click, set to frame size, scale it up just a little bit to where it touches. Then you can keyframe that, move this, make it zoom in a little bit, stretch that out. We can take the opacity, okay, keyframe the opacity at 100, and then take it to 0. And maybe we want it to fade out, right? Well, put it here so it holds, right? It's at 100, 100, 100, 100, and then it's going to start to fade. Now the cool thing with opacity is look down here in the timeline. Oops, let me scroll over here. Come on, why isn't it scrolling? There we go. So if we go over here in our timeline, see this line? Okay, this line on the clips is actually the opacity. And when it's up here at 100, your clips are golden, okay? If you want it, you can actually add visual keyframes for opacity by holding Command, and you see how you get this little plus on your cursor? Anytime I click anywhere while I'm holding Command on that line, it will add a keyframe, and then I can just play with the opacity manually. Okay, so now this one will come in at 0, it'll fade in. Now right here, it's going to start fading out. And then as you adjust these, you can tweak this kind of however you want. So you have a lot of control over how things fade. But did you see how it stopped moving? That's because my scale, I extended my clip, but my keyframe didn't move. So now I got to extend that out so that it keeps moving the whole time. So that's why it's a good idea to just wait, get these all timed out and laid out without making them animated with keyframes, but get them timed to your music so that then you just have to go in and do the keyframes one time. But if you have to adjust them, it's not the end of the world. Again, these keyframes are just references, and they're just little markers that you lay down, and you can move them around wherever you want. But just know that, you know, beforehand, it's not going to do anything, and then it hits that keyframe and it's going to start changing, and then it's going to stop. It just does exactly what you tell it to do. Okay? So that's how you move your photos around. To choose video clips. Okay, so hopefully you guys are going to work in a little bit of video in this too. What I don't want you to do is take a video clip and drop it down in here. Oops, let me clear the in and out here. I don't want you to just take the entire clip and drop it down in here and then try to cut it away to just the piece that you want. That takes forever, and it's going to clutter up your timeline. Okay, so what you do is you double click on your video clip, and it's going to show up in the preview window. And then up here, you can scrub. Okay, you can either hit spacebar to play. You can use J, K, and L, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But L plays forward, J plays backwards, K pauses. Okay, if you hit L twice, it'll go 2x speed. Hit it again, it goes 4x, 8x, 16x, and so on. Okay, so you can actually scrub very efficiently without actually even using the mouse, just by using J, K, and L. If you want to go one frame at a time, you hold down K with your middle finger, and if you tap L, it will go forward one frame at a time. If you hold down K and you tap J, it will go backward one frame at a time. So you can very accurately find exactly, let's see, I want to get this little guy right when he smiles. Okay, so check this out. So we're going to go forward. Okay, right here is where I want it to come in. And so I found this frame. I'm going to hit I on my keyboard. Okay, and that sets an in point. Now I'm just going to hit L so it plays forward. Okay, now I know it's coming up, so I'm going to hold K down. I'm going to go one frame at a time. Okay, boom. There's the frame where I want it to stop. So I hit O on my keyboard. And now I have an in and an out. Now I don't want the audio from this clip because I already have my own music. Okay, and if we listen to this, it's got a voice track, but a music track also. So I just want the visual. So if you want to see it and hear it, just grab up here and pull it down. See how it's got the video is this top one and the audio is the bottom one. If you just want to see it, you don't want the audio, you grab this little square, and that's going to just bring down the video. If you want to only hear it and not see it, then you grab this little waveform, and it just brings down the sound. Okay, so I just want to see it, so I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to drop it right there. And now, okay, So it's really, really a pretty easy process. Now, if I get in there and I want to make this clip longer or shorter, all of this footage is still there. All I have to do is grab the end and stretch it out, and all this footage now all that footage is there, okay? But by setting your in and your out up here in the preview window, it's going to keep your timeline a lot cleaner and less cluttered, okay? So now you know how to put your photos in, you know how to make them zoom and change, whatever parameters you need to with the photos. You know how to select a specific clip ahead of time and just bring down what you want. If it's a clip that doesn't have music and you want the audio track for it, what you need to do, since you can put your music down on audio too. That might be easier. You can have up to 99 audio tracks and 99 video tracks. Okay, we're only going to have a couple, but if you want to put your main song down here on audio 2 or 3 so it's out of the way, that's fine. So if I were to bring this guy down like this, okay, this is the audio from the clip. Watch.
He is holding out hope.
So you can see how the songs don't really jive. So if it's a clip that has, some spoken words or some natural sound that you want in there, that's fine. This is the volume for that clip if you need to adjust that to blend a little bit better. But if you put it in there and you decide you don't want it, then you can just right click it, unlink it, and then you can select that and delete it. Okay? So now let me show you how to do graphics, and then we'll end this tutorial and you guys can get to work. So now it's time to make a title. Okay, so up here at the top, you go to graphics, and you've got your tools here for creating your slides. Once you have some text in here, this over here will be your panel where you can control the text. You can choose your font, you can choose how it's justified, etc., etc. Be very careful with your mouse clicks here. If you get crazy with double clicking stuff, you're going to end up with a bunch of empty text boxes that become kind of hard to manage. Okay, so click on the type tool or hit T on the keyboard, click one time and type, right? So let's say since 2008, thousands of Syrian, and then we're gonna go hit enter. Hit enter again. Okay, so now, and then just click up here on your selection tool, and you'll notice before I even touch it, you'll see this little target right here. Okay, since we have left justified our text, the reference point or the anchor point for our text, this coordinate is on the left edge. If we center justify our text, you'll see that it moves that more toward the middle. Okay, so, and then if you go here, then oh no, it didn't do it. Hold on. Okay, so I always like to center justify the text if I can, and then you can use this to center it vertically, and you can use this button to center it horizontally. Now, I wish I could type here. Hold on. Okay, so now notice this inverted pattern. Okay, now, and this is actually what I'm gonna do is this. Now, let's see. I like the way that's written. You want to create an upside down triangle where the top line of your title is the longest, second line is shorter, and then if you have to have a third line, you want it just to be like 1 or 2 words. So let's change this and say okay. Now I just made this title up, whatever. But you can see how with this just sitting there, okay, you can read that very quickly and easily without having to scan your eyes left and right. Versus if I were to make it like this, and then, oh no, we have to shrink this down to be able to see it. Okay, so now we have to shrink our text. Oh, hold on. Can't even do it all at once here. Hold on. This is not, hold on. Look. In order to get this all on one line, we're going to have to make our text much, 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 much smaller. And look, even this. This. Okay. Now I guess that works. Oh, see, darn it. We'll have to leave that there. But I mean, this title's okay to read, but I prefer, you know, if you have to have a longer title, have it take up, you know, maybe 2/3 of the screen, then half, and then boom. With that inverted pyramid, it's so much easier to read. But what it creates down here is another asset, and in your timeline it looks just like a photograph, okay? And if it's got nothing underneath it, it will be over black. If it's in the timeline by itself, it will be over black. If you put it over the top of something, then it appears this way. Okay, so over here it looks good, right? It works because this is a pretty simple frame. But check this out. Look how chaotic this gets and how hard to read this gets when it's over something that's a little bit busier. So you need to be really aware that I generally prefer, if possible, your titles will be more powerful if they're by themselves over black. Now, the other thing that's going to make them really powerful is, especially if it's coming off of video, right? Hold on. See how it's a little bit jarring that it's standing still? So just animate it like you would a photo. So we're going to make it zoom from 100 to 110 so that as we're reading it, it's just gently coming towards us. And that's it. I mean, if you want to change up how it looks, right? Come in here with your text tool. You select the text. Down here, you can, I mean, you have tons and tons of fonts. Now, make good font choices. Go with things that are classic and elegant and simple. Okay, you don't want a distracting font. I prefer a lighter font. It looks a little bit more clean and modern. Okay, you can also change the color, but again, white on black is a really good combination. But here's where you change the color. You can add a stroke, all kinds of stuff to it. All right, but it's cool to keep it consistent. Your titles need to be the same. All right, they need to be the same text. They need to feel the same when you look at them, so that this whole production has continuity. Okay, so that's it basically. When you get, you know, undo that. When you get to the end, again, you're making a 60 to 90 second PSA. So you can take your music, shrink it down. Don't leave, if your video stops here at 60 and you leave this big tail on the end of your project, it's going to just keep playing over a black screen. And that's no fun. All right, so make sure that you're cutting off your music, and you can do a nice little fade out on that too. If you hit Command, this line, just like the opacity on your video clips, this line is volume on audio. So if you hold Command and you click on this line down here, it'll give you little keyframes for being able to fade out your audio track as well. Okay. and you can tweak that around however you like as well. Okay, that should be enough to get you guys started. Good luck. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.